What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Fringe Faith Podcast. If you didn't know, I took a break. Why? Well, I got hit by a truck. I've got a broken hand and messed up pelvis, and my hips are out of alignment and everything. I'm okay. I have surgery coming up in a couple days, but I just decided to take a break. I probably should have gotten back to this a little sooner, but I don't know. I like life is crazy right now, and so I'm going to get back into the podcast now because I want to and because I need to, and it'll give me something to do because I'm not working right now. So tonight I just did an episode recorded for my friend's podcast, the Honest Podcast. And we decided that we would both release it on our platforms. This gives me sort of the push to start editing and recording again, and it also is just great cross-pollination. I think we had a fun episode here, and if you like it, you really should go and subscribe to his podcast because it's a really good one. And if you like what I talk about, especially on the mental health aspect of things or the relational aspect of things, you'll really like his podcast. So this is his interview with me for his podcast starting now, and we'll get back to hopefully complete weekly uploads. Thanks, guys. And if you have been praying for me, thank you. Could still use those prayers, and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Honest Podcast. I have a really good friend, Thomas, here. This guy I met pretty recently in Redding, California. I went to BSSM, the Bethel Supernatural School of Ministry, with his wife. She was in my first year, and we just became really good friends through one of the group events called Activation, where we went onto the streets and preached the gospel, or attempted to, and failed miserably many times. And we bonded over that pretty hard in that space. And we just became really good friends. And this guy was just thrown into the mix, and we found that we got along really well. We have similar interests in many different areas, including deep diving down the rabbit hole and conspiracies and trying to figure out what is truth and what is not. And this guy's a special dude. So yeah, I wanted to bring you on and that the world see who you are. And you also have a podcast called The Fringe Faith, right?
Yeah, Fringe Faith
The Fringe
Podcast.
Faith podcast, and I was on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
This guy just does the coolest stuff. He opened my eyes to a lot of topics that I don't even think about, and I think a lot of us don't even bring into our thoughts because there's just so much to research when it comes to YouTube and life, and there's so much going on. I'm just thankful for people like him who take the time to research and tell us the things that we could maybe ponder on and then deep dive in because we found out that it's truth or that there is even something like that. So yeah, Thomas, tell us who you are. Yeah, let's start.
Oh, I'm just a guy living his life. No, I guess you could say that I'm an anomaly. Goodness gracious, I've done so many different things in my life. I mean, I just turned 35. I've lived probably 20 lives since I was born, I guess you could say. But most notably, most people know me for either back in the day when I did a ton of ministry, even was in the middle of like Ferguson during the protests and riots back then, and then shortly after that, I stepped out of ministry after several, like, I don't know, over a decade of doing stuff. And then I ended up getting married and divorced. That was a whole thing. But on my in my process to sort of, I guess, learn to live, I guess, was what I kind of felt like. I felt like I hadn't like done a whole lot of living. I'd just done a lot of stuff. I bought a motorcycle and bought a van, moved into the van and lived in it for a handful of years, worked for a motorcycle apparel brand called Go Fast Don't Die, and then did some other stuff. and eventually ended up back in the St. Louis area with my old mentor, who is Jonathan Thomas. He runs a ministry called Civil Righteousness. And during the years after the divorce, he was sort of provoking me. The Lord was provoking me back into, I guess, he basically was just like, come back to the altar. I didn't know what it meant, but I ended up in St. Louis, even though I didn't necessarily want to be there. Midwest.
St. Louis.
Yeah, I had
Man.
left Indiana, was tired of the Midwest, and I'm like, okay, what the heck? And God basically just like met me there in a really crazy way, and talked to me about like completion. It had been 9 years, and he was like, "You've become a more complete version of yourself." I had a ton of experiences that I wouldn't have had if I'd have just stayed within church culture, and I started to comprehend what life is like in a more full picture paradigm, I guess. Beyond just like, because those people that when you ask them like, what do you love to do, and they're always like, just, oh, I read my Bible and I worship and I what, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
but what do you
What
do?
do you
Like,
do?
what do you do in your free time? If it's just
Yeah.
that, like, so be it. Like, maybe
Yeah.
some people are to be the priests and what do they call those, nun type
Yeah.
person. But
Absolutely.
honestly,
Like
I
that's
just
one shot way to go.
but life is about like the mundane, the fun, the enjoyable. It's about the holistic, health and being fit and strong. It's about being, um, you know, present in the day to day. It's about the sweeping the halls and cleaning your home. It's also about going out and enjoying your life, whether it be motorcycles or disc golf or whatever else. And so he talked to me about like this whole full process of like, yeah, you have this base that I built under you when you were young in ministry, but there's also all this other, there's just this other aspect to life that you now get and you can teach other people to live into. And then there was also, seeking truth. I've learned so many different things over the last handful of years. And that's a big part of my story these last few years. Is like, I am a challenger type. I question everything, not because, I'm a doubter or because I'm just trying to be, what's the word, divisive, but because, if you truly want to grasp the totality that you can, of the, like say faith, for instance. I think Marty Solomon in this book, I think he says something to the effect of, it's called Asking Better Questions of the Bible. And he's talking about how people are afraid to ask questions because they think that it means that you doubt. But in reality,
Right.
when you ask the right questions, it leads you to a stronger faith. And so between
100%
faith,
agree.
between faith and life and all that stuff, I'm big on that. And then, as he said, I met my now wife, who was out here in Reading. And yeah, I ended up connecting with Anthony, and we talk about literally everything. We're good buds, and we agree on a ton of different stuff, and we challenge each other. That's dope, I think, and that's iron sharpening iron.
100%. I think back in the text where you randomly text me and say, do 40 push-ups. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I
You're a
need to do that
great
again.
challenger. Yeah, I think you should, man. I've been sitting on the couch quite too often lately after work. So, but my work is also physical, so that helps a ton.
That
Man,
is good.
yeah, on that truth topic, I 100% agree. I think a big part of why I started this podcast was that I saw a big disconnect between what Christians actually experience and what we're told Christians should look like. And it took me years to feel like I was a part of this thing, that it felt like I was a Christian that fit in some kind of a box that was relevant and right. And it was an agonizing process for me. So I think this podcast was to help others to see, oh, I'm normal. Like, I'm not alone in this process. Like, I have problems. I have gone through things. I have these questions. Like, I might be in the pursuit of truth. Like, you and I both have a passion for the truth. some people might have a passion for literature or academics, but at the end of the day, God kind of envelops both of these things, your passion and to live this Christian life holy and blameless.
Yeah.
It's a melding of designs and
But
understanding
also, he's
choices,
the way, the truth, and the life. Like, he's the
Right.
way, the truth, and the life, right? So there's an
Yeah.
aspect of seeking out the Lord when you're seeking out truth. You know, and
Right.
the dangerous part is, like, a lot of people, especially with conspiracy stuff, they go like, "Oh no, you'll end up in a like living in a bunker and like afraid of everything." And I'm like, "No, that's not actually seeking truth. That's just confirming your fear biases."
Yeah. Yeah.
When you actually seek out the truth, you recognize that, yeah, a lot of the conspiracy world is it's loaded and it's laced with both truth and lies, and you have to
Oh yeah.
have the what's that called, discernment, to
Uh-huh.
be able to split, and the spirit, because the spirit can cut, soul from some for spirit, or however that text goes, in the same
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
he can articulate what is true and what isn't. And so it's a process, but like, it really does, I truly believe that the more you seek truth, the more you are led to Christ. So
I agree with that fully. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I'm trying to figure out too. It's like I I don't want to be closed to any question because at the end of the day, like if you ask all the questions and you deep dive down the holes that of the things that make you feel like you're doubting the Lord or doubting this or that, you most often come to the conclusion that, oh, this is truth because I've
Mhm.
seeked out this thing instead of just saying, I blatantly look at this and it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
sure, I'll do it. But deep in your heart, you just feel this frustration.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't
It's like,
know if I really believe it.
yeah, it's like, oh, the historicity actually is there, you know? Like, a lot of people
Yeah.
are like, oh, yeah, well, did Jesus actually exist? It's like, oh, when you really look into it, you realize, oh, no, there's so much evidence to the fact that he
Yeah.
did
Too
exist.
much.
He did what he said he did. And,
Yeah.
anyways, like, we don't need to go down to
Right.
that rabbit hole necessarily,
Hey,
but
it's a fantastic route to go, but
yeah.
dang. So what led you to this pursuit of truth, I guess? Like, when did this start and why? Like, your podcast, very focused on fringe faith. I remember we had this conversation while I was driving to South Carolina over the phone and over text about what's it, blurry things or what blurry
Blurry
creatures,
creatures.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the podcast. And I was
Yep.
like, man, this fits you so well. And you wanted to connect to this side of the podcast realm,
Yeah.
and you seem to blend both the normal and the crazy in one, which is so
Hmm.
cool.
Well,
So
and
why? Yeah.
that's the holistic approach to it, because I love blurry creatures. I talk about some of the stuff that they do, but I don't want to be blurry creatures. I
Yeah.
want to kind of walk alongside some of what they talk about. Obviously, I think a lot of it's super important, but
Yeah.
I also personally want to talk about all the things, health, holistic things, masculinity, femininity,
Uh,
even healthy marriages and relationships, as well as good theology, apologetics, stuff like that,
uh,
but that's the point of the podcast. But the reason I got there, I guess, is like, I mean, even when I was a teenager, I remember sitting in like Sunday school and stuff, and we would talk about like the harder things theologically. I just guess I always had a little bit of fascination for kind of comprehending things. There was probably also back then enough insecurity to be like, oh, I know
uh,
things and I want to prove
well,
myself.
all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I actually, funny story. I remember back in the day, almost every time we would meet in my young adults group, uh, me and another guy would end up bringing the conversation to free will and predestination.
Love it.
Every
Like
time.
the strongest debate ever,
Uh
man.
huh. Uh huh. And we'd just be like, well, it depends on free will or predestination, like. And we would get to that point, and then a handful of years later, after I did Youth of the Mission and I had some other life experiences happen, I started to sort of calm down in my restlessness or my need for approval and attention and stuff. And I started to realize, like, oh, I don't have to respond to every single thing and prove that I know something about it anymore. I would just shut my mouth. And I was like, oh,
This is
this
great.
is this is breaking insecurity. What breaking insecurity feels like. This is what, but yeah, so I would be super deep into all that stuff. I just enjoyed it. And then I'd say 2020, I was like, this stuff doesn't make sense. I didn't really get it. And then I had a friend, he lives in Hawaii now, but he was the vocalist in a metalcore band. And I knew his drummer and got to know him a little bit. And he was posting things that were just like super left field that I had no grid for because he's using
Wow.
terminology that I'm like, I don't know what this means, but he's talking about things that I think, he's onto something about. And next thing I know, I'm like deep diving every freaking
Yes,
thing
dude.
and down like all sorts of conspiracy rabbit holes. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh, everything I thought I knew, it is not quite right. Like
Yeah.
I know that I know that I know that Jesus is who he says he is and that the Bible is true. But man, there's so many layers to that. There's so
Yeah.
much to like modern day society and politics and everything else that's so laced in this spiritual thing. Um, like, oh, wait, a lot of the people that are running these countries truly do believe in these gods like Moloch and Baal and stuff
Uh,
like that, and they still do, and they still serve them, and they still actively like the Shiva at CERN, things like that, and you start to recognize that, like, oh, like this isn't just coincidental, like, oh, it looked cool. Like they're doing full on ceremonies and stuff, and I'm starting to realize that, oh, the spiritual warfare the Lord's talking about is way more in our faces than we realize, and our world view, mostly because of Constantine, or not Constantine, sorry, Augustine, because of Augustine. I mean, and Augustine said a lot of good things, but he took Christians from a very spiritual like comprehension of things to a very physical uh, approach to things, like a more of a almost Darwinistic, naturalistic, I guess might be the word, point of view. And it's like after I started to see all of that, I was like, oh, I need to really grasp things. And I'm a big health guy, so I started to get into things like what's wrong with food and then I realized, oh, sunlight is actually really good for us. And when we aren't, you know, going out into it only occasionally getting burnt and then, whatever. But like when we actually get chronic sun exposure, hey, it's super good for our mitochondria. Anyways, all of it.
wow.
I was just like, whoa, everything that I thought I knew is either skewed or a little bit wrong or like there's way more depth to it than I ever thought there was.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's wild. And so this started pretty young, obviously,
a little
which
bit,
is,
yeah, like grasping basic theology and apologetics, I think was a big thing back then. Um,
huh,
so yeah,
interesting.
and
Huh.
I I don't
Did you
usually
ever do
say that.
debates?
I mean, just within group context, but I don't usually tell people about that because I never think about that. I always think of like, oh yeah, 2020 happened, and that made me question everything. But I've realized recently, like, oh wait, this actually goes way back further because of my
Wow.
desire to like comprehend things. So, yeah,
It's crazy. Yeah, and you were touching a little bit on family and that process of getting healthy, like mental
yeah,
health. I think
yeah,
that's something that I've seen both you and Emma walk powerfully in. Is you guys just talk super straight in your marriage. You talk super straight before you were even married
yeah.
about the depths and like I've done this, I've gone through this process. Like, how did you get to this space? Like, what made you go after health, even in coming from this crazy background, where you've been kind of all over the place.
For me, so after my first marriage, the divorce, so there was an affair, and then there was me fighting for the marriage for 6 months, and then when it didn't happen, when there wasn't a redemption there, I fell apart. But there were a couple
Wow.
things that I had decided. I was like, one of the reasons why I fought for that marriage, even after infidelity, was because I knew a couple that had survived it and had a beautiful marriage beyond. And like
Wow.
the redemption story was incredible. Her conviction was intense. Um, and I was like, I want to embody that. The other things were like, if this marriage does end up dissolving, then I don't want to take any of what happened in that marriage into my future relationships. And not to say that I did it perfectly, but I did my best to feel, I guess, all the emotions that I needed to feel. Um, Now, did I cope with, being sexually promiscuous for a while? Yes, I did. I'll be honest. But most of the time, I, tried to dig through all the emotional things that were going on. Actually cry, actually feel things, because I was like,
Wow.
because I knew that if I didn't, I would bury it and it would come back out in my future marriage.
Yeah.
In the marriage that I'm in now. And through that, I think I just have always been super um, intellectual and trying to grasp things. And I had a pretty decent base of knowledge on how relational dynamics should be, I guess, and how to talk and how to whatever. Because even in that marriage, we never like fought. We would
Uh,
have like little disagreements, and there were some things, but like I never raised my voice more than like, my typical, like, I can be just loud just because I'm loud, but I never like yelled. We never like fought. And that was always in me anyway. It's just like, that's not a thing that I'm willing to do. But since then, I've learned how to articulate what's going on with me better, because even
wow.
when I was going through the process of all the divorce stuff, I came to some friends and I was like, hey, I recognize that what I'm feeling is probably mostly lies, but I need to express them to you. Otherwise, they will
Uh,
just fester in me. And so I
yeah.
started learning stuff like that. And, over the years, I got better at it. And, uh, I guess I am open enough and vulnerable enough that I'm like, I'm not going to hide a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to, you know, and I'm going to be honest. Like, you can take me or leave me is kind of my approach with
Yeah.
anybody, any relationship. Even with Emma, in a lot of ways, she says that I sort of trauma dumped on her when we first actually started talking, I guess, but I don't remember that. But I do know that I'm the type of person that I'm like, hey, here's me and here's the stuff that I've been through and here's what's going on. Like, take it or leave it, kind of a thing. And I do that with a lot of people. I'll push things, subtly. I'm not like arrogantly pushing like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And like, if you don't agree with me, then, but like, I'll like subtly like nudge people and things and see where they stand and like, okay, can you handle where I'm gonna go with this if I open up on it, or should I mute it and kind of thing.
Uh,
So when it came to Emma, she was just like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, like this is what you've been through, this is who you are, and so it was beautiful in that. And then we did the pre-marriage course, which honestly I think they should just open up to as a relational comprehension course, because for
wow.
all but the last session, that's what it is anyway. It's communication skills 101, really.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
we realized, like, first of all, we both have done a lot of emotional work. We both have learned to comprehend ourselves, or like understand ourselves enough. I'll put a pin in that part. But we we went through it and realized, like, oh, we're doing a lot of this stuff already, but most people don't get this, and that's one reason
Right.
why we were like, okay, I feel like we're gonna teach this at some point, or we're gonna,
Wow.
And there's been a few times where we've had conversations with friends of ours where we're like, hey, this is what we've seen works, and we've been able to sort of plant seeds. Sometimes people are more open than others, um, but the pin is that, you can get to a point in self-awareness. There's this thing in culture right now where it's like all about self-awareness. I think self-awareness is important, but when it becomes selfishness, like constant uh like, what's the word I'm looking for here, self-love, or constant,
Uh,
at a certain point it becomes antithetical to the gospel. But understanding yourself enough to be able to articulate what's going on inside you is actually necessary for good, healthy communication with others. Because then you can go, hey, I'm feeling this, and I recognize that I might be believing a lie, but we need to talk this out. Or, say, with my wife, she comes to me and she's upset about something. Some of the language that we learned was, her emotions don't make me a bad guy, so I don't have to get defensive. I can just sit
Right.
and listen and be like, hey, okay, why do you feel that? What's going on? If it's something that I
Yeah.
actually did, then I can go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way.
Right.
Or,
Because it's
hey,
just
this was a
feelings, right?
misunderstanding. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
feelings. It's not necessarily truth. And I don't have to be insecure about like, oh no, like, oh, she's mad. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? And I don't
Right.
and I don't have to immediately go like, well, I didn't mean that, or I like obviously I
Yeah.
was, I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to defend myself. And I think if we can get to those points where it's like, it's not self-ishness to the point of like, oh, it's all about me. And if I ever have to sacrifice myself for you, then that's manipulation. No, actually, that's like me loving you like Christ loved the church. It's not. I don't have to back away from. Anyways, that's a soapbox.
Wow. Hey, it's true,
um,
man.
but yeah, I think all that's
Wow.
I guess that's kind of how I got to that was, I mean, part of it was the rebuild from destruction of, that happened in my life. It was, and the willingness to face both my demons and face the music and face, what was going on inside me and all that. So,
Dang. So how would you say, because one of my biggest changes in my life was marriage. Before I was pretty immature and had a lot of insecurities, specifically in the relationship realm, because it was hurt so much, or I was just reckless with my past dating experiences, or whatever you want to call it. Like, how was the experience different after marriage than what you expected? Like,
you mean
because
the first
that's
marriage?
first and second marriage. Like, I'd love to hear when you got married,
Um,
especially to Emma. Like,
was
what
it
what
different?
yeah, like what did you expect, and what have you found that it actually really is?
Well, with Emma, I think I mean, we were so open and healthy from the beginning that it's exactly what I think I expected it to be,
It's amazing,
um,
man.
which is beautiful. Um, first marriage, I recognized that there were things that I chose to like ignore as far as like red flag type things. And there were character issues. She wasn't a super strong Christian. She was pretty nominal, I think, as far as like where she stood. She had a few experiences, but nothing. But like as far as like where we were on like faith levels, I was way up here. She's way down here. She had she had been through stuff, and I thought at the time I remember that like, oh, she's mature, but then she went through emotional like just got basically I get hit by a hammer by her family, and just fell apart. And then she turned into somebody that and we just that whole relationship ended up being just we were just constantly in like she was in a trauma loop and I was in survival mode the whole time. So that marriage for sure was not what I had expected it to be,
Wow.
at all, which was a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one, honestly, I mean, it's a few things. I think used to take myself too seriously. Um, and that's something I realized after the divorce. I was like, oh, I took myself way too seriously. I need to like chill out. And I would get, I wouldn't express anger in like a really mean way or whatever, but I would have flash in a pan anger towards myself or in frustrations or like,
Right.
road rage type situations where I'm like, you idiot or whatever. Or like I'd forget something and I'd be on my way to work and I'd be like, you dumb A or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so I had a lot of that, and I don't know. I mean, I guess some of it is just like recognizing that, like, okay, life's serious, but it ain't that serious. I don't have to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
that stressed out about everything. Like,
It's
and
true, man.
so I don't know. I don't know what it is that kind of got me to this point. I mean, probably some of it is maturity, some of it's willingness to do the work and to keep going anyway. But
Yeah, so a lot of the questions I've had with God, a lot of conversations I've had with people around me, almost the most overarching choice of thought has been, I've just lost my job, moving into a new season, and everything's changing. How am I going to survive financially? How am I going to figure out what I'm supposed to do? Like, what am I called for? How am I supposed to step into that space? You just went through a major
Oh yeah,
life change in some ways. Would you talk
in
about
multiple
that as
ways.
well, and also your expectations? What kind of journey has God taken you on in your mind in the space of provision as a husband, masculinity, like what it looks like when you have no control over your financial, your physical situation. I can't do this or that.
Yeah, couple things. One, the detour is the path, right?
Uh,
Um, so whenever life feels like you're on a detour, like it's the path. It is the path that you're supposed to be on. It's the path you're on, and the speed bumps in the road, they are part of the path. And recognizing that, and then recognizing that like every season is going to look different, and they're all preparing you for later, right? And the Lord has prepared me through a lot of seasons of faith for right now. And then one more thing that I'm thinking of before I really get into it, I think you interviewed somebody a while back, and he said something to the effect of, I believe it was on your podcast. He said something to the effect of like, "I'm not the head of my household, God is."
yeah.
And like recognizing that, it's like,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was Josh Coate, I think.
yeah, it ain't up to me. It's just not. It's not up to me. Um, And so right now I'm in a season. So my wife and I are expecting within about the next 2 months to have
Yeah,
our first
dude.
kid. Yeah, which was a surprise. We weren't trying, but it happened, and so now we're waiting. And we were gearing up for that, getting all the baby things together and excited, and we kind of had a plan, financially speaking, midwives, all that stuff, and I was gonna work, and we're gonna do some stuff, and then there's other life changes that are around the corner probably too, and just a lot of stuff kind of just coming, right, and all that life change just is just big anyway. And
Right.
then a month ago, I was on my motorcycle coming home from work, and sitting at a green or a red light. I'm looking around, cars behind me. I noticed some motorcycles behind me, and I'm in the front of the line. Coworkers, there's a coworker behind me, coworker beside me, and then there's the turn lanes. They're going turning left out in front of me and across from our lane or whatever. And I'm in the right lane, and I look up, turns green, so I go. And I did not see the dude run the red light, turn left out in front of me, and I ended up hitting the back end of his truck, and the handlebars broke my hand, and fell off the motorcycle onto the pavement on my left side, and now my hips and everything's super out of alignment, like super twisted. It's like the X-rays look crazy. I will finally be going in for surgery uh, Friday in 2 days. All right, like that's a big deal because I'm not working
Yeah.
right now. Got attorneys, and car insurance stuff is a nightmare, and I don't have health insurance, and so there's certain things that we have to pay up front, which is a huge bummer, and
Yeah.
that's coming out of like what we had saved for everything else that's coming up, and it's like, ooh, it's super stressful. And
Wow.
in the midst of that, we had already paid for a baby moon, so to speak. We went to Hawaii, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to. If I needed to have surgery a lot sooner, then we were probably going to have to just like not do it. But we had already paid for it, and then just this last weekend was my birthday, and we already had a planned trip for Yosemite. So there was all this stuff, and it's like, okay, what do we do? And funny story. There's this lady at Bethel. We happened to go because every once in a while we still go to their Sunday services, and she's talking about how one time when her and her husband lost their jobs at a church that they were at, and she felt like the Lord just told her like, just eat chicken tonight, and she's like, okay, and it's like, okay, in the midst of everything, just do the next right thing, and so we talk a lot about that between the two of us, and yeah, it's stressful, but my life I've been through these seasons of just crazy faith. I quit my job several times when I was younger to go do ministry things, like whether it be go to YWAM or go do the Ferguson response stuff back when the riots and protests were happening, or I just did all sorts of different like super faith things. Like I even tried to move to LA once after quitting my job because I felt like the Lord told me to. Ends up he goes, "I told you to go, not move," and I was like, "Okay." And
Dang.
just like all these different things that I did but God always provided. There's been a few seasons of life, even like with my ex. She was a dual citizen, grew up in Australia, and I felt like it would be best for her mental health to maybe go back home because where she was more familiar. And so we literally went bankrupt, planned on not coming back, and got rid of everything, moved over there, and leaned way too heavy on her family. They screwed us over, and a couple months later, we're back in America. But every step of the way, the Lord provided things and provided things, and like
Wow.
the next thing, and then we're back, and super quick after that, we're already about to have like an apartment. The only reason we didn't move into an apartment together is because she left right before we got like they had one ready for us, and God literally gave me a truck during that season through
Wow.
some people in our small group, and then I was able to buy her a car super easily, like just provision on provision. And then with living in the van, like God made it so that I could live on like I think it was like $1,000 a month for like
Amazing.
3 or 4 months,
Wow.
or more. And just kind of like able to live and get by on it. And like I've lived like that enough to know that like when the Lord, especially when the Lord says to do something, but even when you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing, like the Lord really loves you. He really loves us. And that was something that I really learned through the process of the divorce, because while I was dealing with that stuff, there was a time where and there's this lyric by Levi the poet, and it says, and I still know your voice, and the only thing that it speaks is love, and I recognize that because that word never comes to me from me. And I heard that, and I was like, oh, that's so true of me.
Oh,
Like, I believe that like God cares about me because he had proved it at that point so many times. But I was like, I don't know that I believe that you love me, though. Because it's like, I sort of felt like, yeah, I just kind of just get by, so it's like he cares enough to
yeah.
not let me drown, but at the same time, and then over the time, I just learned. I was like, oh, like no, God does love me. Life isn't as serious as I felt like it needed to be, and I don't actually
Wow.
have to make everything happen. And hustle culture actually is kind of stupid and
Yeah, it's
antithetical to the
ridiculous.
gospel. And so yeah. So all that said, brings me to this season, and we're stressed. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there's some anxieties
Yeah.
about things. But ultimately, we just keep coming back to like, we were in Hawaii, and there's these things called koqui frogs that like chirp just a bunch, and they've got a very specific chirp, but we hear it every night when we're sleeping, and we'd be laying there and talking about all the things like the surgery and everything else, and we just started making this joke instead of, God cares about all the birds. We'd be like, God cares about you more than the koqui frogs, and it's like just that reminder, and we keep saying it even though we're not in Hawaii anymore. It's like God cares about you more than that koqui frogs. He's gonna figure it out. And so far everything has lined up enough. You know,
Wow.
uh, some money comes in from this thing or whatever, and I'm still waiting to see if I'll get on disability or not. I'll get a paycheck from that or not. Whether or not I have to go back to work before I'm supposed to or not.
Wow.
And then the baby will be here like right after after my hands healed up, and it's just like, all right, things will work out, and I trust that. I know that. I've seen it. I've experienced it, and
Right.
so yeah, I'm in it again. But it's like, okay, I'm a little anxious sometimes, but ultimately, I'm like, my history with the Lord shows that like, no, I'm gonna be okay, and I know that. And as long as I continue to live like it, then he would and lean into him, which I haven't done the best job at. I've been kind of sulky. I've been kind of just sitting around watching TV too much. And honestly, like, this podcast is good for me because I haven't actually done any podcasts since my wreck, because I was like, all right, I'm taking a break. And then I was like, okay, I need to start editing stuff. But then I get so just like and like all day just kind of passes by, and then I'm like, I feel
Yeah.
crappy about myself. But like,
Yeah.
then I'll get back into a clear headspace. I'm like, no, everything's okay. Like, I just need to do the next right thing.
We need
Just do
community,
the next
man.
right thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have that here hardly, which is another
Mm,
thing. I'll be honest, that's another thing, and that leads into more, potential life changes in the future, or definite life changes in the future. But
wow.
that's not something we're just but I'm not gonna say,
Yeah,
So
totally get it, dude.
yeah.
So, well, that raises a good question. Why do you think it's so difficult for our generation, or at least almost everybody I know struggles with finding close friends in our age group? I just find it very difficult for people to make the effort or time for us to be awake or not too tired to actually invest into people. Like, why have you found that community has been so difficult in the church or just in your life in these seasons?
These things.
Phones.
Phones.
That's a great conversation right there, my friend. Right
That is
there.
a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Like scientifically speaking, when you have bathed yourself in blue light a bunch, first of all, your
Hmm.
phone's. I really should be wearing my blue light glasses, honestly. I wasn't even thinking about it, but
You're looking at a screen right now.
I know blue light. Like we're getting inundated by blue light. Like there's so much. You and I talked about this on our episode, so I'm not going to go super deep into that
Yeah.
part. But like, it is destructive to our mitochondria, and our mitochondria is what fuels our
Hmm.
life and our energy levels and everything else. And if our mitochondria isn't functioning properly, then we don't have the energy to whatever. And we're constantly bathing ourselves in blue light. Not only that, the dopamine just blast that we get scrolling Instagram or
Yeah.
TikTok or whatever, we end up dopamine depleted and we don't feel like we can do anything else.
Wow.
And we've lost a lot of our social capabilities. I know guys like Gary V. They're always like, yeah, people are more connected than ever, and it's like that's a good thing. I'm like, okay, but they're like surface level. Yeah, we are. We're super connected,
Oh
but
yeah.
there's zero depth to most of our relationships.
Yeah, it's
Um,
scary.
yeah. So as far as a generation goes, those are the big things. We don't have conversational skills. I mean, look at the political landscape. Everybody's just bickering
Oh man.
instead of being able to,
Yeah,
hey,
real
your
conversations.
emotions, the things that you're going through, the things that you're whatever, doesn't make me a bad guy. And yet
Hmm.
everybody's conversation skill is, oh, you're upset about something. Well, we're upset at you then, and we're gonna fight now. And nobody's got healthy communication skills at all because we weren't taught it. The public school system has just done what it was supposed to and completely inundate humanity into pretty much an oblivion almost at this point.
Wow.
Um, and it's all of the above. It's all of that. As far as where we're at, like Reading is such a transient community that it's just really hard to get plugged
My
in.
goodness. Yeah.
And then with the way that our life is going, it's just like, okay, well, as of right now, with everything going on, we can only invest so much. Um, but I think there are pockets of people that are still doing it. Emma's really close friends in Ohio do community super well. And I've got people that I'm like community with sort of all over the United States now because of
Oh
my
yeah.
gallivanting and stuff. But like, there's not enough depth in that, and I'm excited about
Exactly.
our future. I think our future is going to have the depth that we need, but it is sort of like an actual epidemic in
I
our
agree.
society. I mean, look at Japan. Like the way their stuff has gone. Like people live indoors all the time, and America has been going that direction. Like there's
Mm,
so many people that are joking about the fact that they're like, yeah, I want to meet somebody, but I never leave my house. And it's like, that's
wow.
sad. That's a super sad reality. It's all this stuff, the social anxiety, but I think most of that also comes from our phones. There's this expectation to live a certain life or life a certain way
Right.
or be capable of, articulating yourself super well. And realistically, it's like, no,
Mm,
I don't know. Like, you just got to try, man. Like, we're
right.
all going to
I
be bad
agree.
at stuff. I
Yeah.
I feel
Oh
like
man.
I'm relatively articulate now, but I used to suck at, being good at conversation. And
Uh,
I used to not be able to articulate a lot of my arguments well, but I just spent the time and I did the studying and I did stuff. So it's
right.
like, we just got to embrace our humanity again, man. I feel like we just have it. And um, we've just been steadily moving towards this technocracy, what people are becoming, transhuman almost. Like, it's
Oh day.
not good. So,
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's pretty terrible. I agree. I think that's the hardest process for me has been finding best friends, people I actually want to see every single week.
Yeah.
Like it's been years. I think recently I have more of that now, but I feel like it's momentary and then it disappears because people get too busy or I get too busy or I start becoming so self-centered in what I'm doing in my life that I forget to involve others. I think that's a something I'm trying to figure out for myself is just that like I it's okay to rely on others. I don't have to like figure it all out myself
Yeah.
because that's my tendency is to naturally just say, all right, I'm a man, like then my job is to fix things, to fix a car, fix all of this, just put out the
That's a
fires where
little
I
bit
have to.
that's a little bit natural, but it's also a little bit unnatural.
Oh,
It's
100%.
a lot of it's actually society. But
Yes.
realistically, when you look at back at healthy societies, the saying "it takes a village to raise children," like it really should take a
Yeah,
village to raise children to do all the
bro.
things. We shouldn't, we shouldn't be like society thinks that the old ways was okay. The man goes to the house and the woman took care of the house. That or goes to work and sorry, let me rephrase that. Like people think that the old ways was like the man goes to work and the woman takes care of the house. That's not the actual old ways. That's like after industrial revolution type
Huh.
life. Pre-industrial revolution when things actually were the way they're supposed to be, a little bit more so. Dad might be a blacksmith, the kids are probably helping along with it, and the wife is probably also doing stuff. But the blacksmith forgery is probably just outside the house, and so you're still living
Yeah,
together, you're still
close.
doing life together, and then because you're the blacksmith, the guy across the street, he's the butcher. You go get your food from him, and you trade services, or you do whatever, and it's like you recognize I'm reliant on that guy, he's reliant on the hunter to go get the food probably, or
Uh,
the people that are that have the cattle or have the whatever, and
right.
everybody's actually reliant on each other. And yeah, I might know a little bit about butchering things because maybe I go out and I hunt deer
Right.
and whatnot, but like ultimately people used to live communally and recognize that like this guy's got these skills, and yeah, this guy's got a jack of all trades, but he doesn't
Uh,
have every trade. So like he can do these things super well, but also he can take care of this stuff, but also when he can, he'll get the actual expert to do it. And you know and people would go to like the local pub and like that's where they would commune or whatever, so like
yeah.
the actual old ways, super healthy. I think people get their panties in a bunch, like especially when it comes to like the feminism or other stuff. They're like, well, people want the old ways, then they want the woman chained to the table and this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, traditionally speaking, yeah, the women did a lot more of that, but like realistically, mom and dad were home. They both took care of their things that they agreed upon, and
right.
they might have a family business where all of them do stitching of some sort, and it's like,
Right.
I don't know. I think that's an actual healthy approach to community, and how
Wow.
we get back to that, I don't know.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think Mary and I just had this exact conversation. The frustration of, oh, like we don't have people around us that we feel comfortable like leaving Jasper with because,
Mhm,
it's like babysitting. Who do we ask to take
mhm,
care of our kiddo? When we want
yeah,
to go out or when we want to do this or that. It's just like we're not close to family. Like having that fight with your own mind, like did I make the right choice? Like am I in the
yeah,
right place? Should I have been close to family? Like there's so much that goes on. Like the choices we make have all of these myriad of dominoes falling at the same time. Like wow, like we really take on too much responsibility ourselves, and we need to
Right.
involve people in it. And how do you do that when you've done it for so long on your own?
Yeah. Well, I think some of it is you have to be willing to self-sacrifice for yourself, or like for others. I mean, and then hope and pray that they'll do the same for you. But like,
Yeah,
I think that's what the church was meant to be. I mean, right now it's an institution, and trying to actually
yeah,
collaborate real life with people is kind of goofy, especially because most people they don't think like doing life means actually living into each other's lives on a daily
yeah.
basis
Like,
or
who
a
do you know
weekly
who
basis.
does that? Like, it's
I actually
so
know a
very
couple
few.
people. Thank God, it's
Oh,
super
I
few.
do not know many people, man.
Well, like so, Emma's community in Ohio. You know, eventually we plan on being back there. But like her close friends, they legit are like they see each other as often as possible. They're like
Wow.
actually living into each other's lives. I feel like, and it's not like, oh, let's just get coffee once in a while. It's like, no, like Emma, before she came out to BSSM, it was like she'd go over, she'd do some chores around the house just to be helpful and stuff, but she'd be there in their lives.
Why?
And
Right.
her other friends would be the same way. They'd be over there, and they'd actually. So, and it's not every week you're gonna see each other all the time. It's not. It
Right.
doesn't have to be that, but it's like a very intentional. Hey, when stuff hits the fan or somebody's in the hospital, like we're willing to drop whatever we can drop to be there for each other, and that's a covenant community. And
Right.
you don't see that a lot because people don't know what covenant community should look like. But that's what the church should be working towards. So yeah,
Oh
man.
man, that's so important. I think this is the kind of stuff we need to be focusing on more in our lives because without it, we really are just selfish human beings that go through our lives trying to make our own things come true. And it's we like maybe the last time we've helped someone change their tire or fix someone's car for free or
Yeah.
do that's just my world of like the physical hands-on stuff, but everyone's got something to give in their community, and we're like pawning our business off of the people around us to the point where it's like it's all transactional and there's very few like sacrificial connections where
It
we're
is. Well,
giving. Yeah.
it has a lot to do with that whole like back when I took myself too seriously, I felt like I had to be like hustling for the things. And when you're
Yeah.
in that mentality, you're very self-centered. So they're very
Yeah.
self-focused, very like,
100%.
what's the thing that I need to do what? And I've just realized, like, listen. I've been around some seriously successful people,
Uh,
um, and I've just watched that. It's like, yeah, you're super successful, but like, and like everybody thinks that your marriage is super great, but like you're like, okay, but there's this thing that's like super turbulent that you kind of just shove under
wow.
the rug, and then there's this thing, and then as far as like relationally goes, like, yeah, you've got friends, but how many of them are actually super deep? Like, how many of them could you actually
Uh,
open up to? And like, granted, these are people that aren't necessarily believers, and so they're not going to have quite the same moral compass as you and I would.
right.
But um, recognizing that, holy cow, that whole thing, that whole paradigm, it's just so unfulfilling. And but that's what culture is about
Right.
right now. And
100%.
yeah, and we've got to get back to like focusing on people,
Wow.
um, and focusing on like relationships because that's what's really like that's what's actually like fulfilling is when Christ said die to self or die like those that die for each other and all the those ideals, like it wasn't like just a good suggestion. It's like, no, this is how you live a fulfilled life, is pick up your cross and lay it down for others, essentially. And
Dang. So
everything else, like,
convicting.
yeah, we should go after things, but it shouldn't be like I'm just not of the mind anymore. Like I don't believe that our businesses should be our big priority anymore. Um I think they should be a priority, but not like the top one. And
Right.
we treat it like it is. And then there's people that are like, yeah, God first, family second, and then my business. I'm almost like God first, family second, people third, and then your business maybe.
Right. And I
Because
mean, all of those things coinciding each other will make a successful business. It's
yeah,
just is
yeah.
what it is.
And here's, I guess, I'm reminded of some things, but like something I was thinking about before I got injured was if excellence is void of the fruits of the Spirit, which are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self control, right? If
Mm,
excellence is void of those things, is it excellence or is it just
mm.
vanity?
Good
Because
question.
I know dudes that are super successful, but they do not, like, they may have love for the family, but not for their employees. They may have
Mm,
joy in some things, but like when they're at work, they're so stressed out that they're not actually like having any joy. Uh,
wow.
or peace because of that, the stresses of everything. They're so anxious and worried about it. And like, they're like, I've got to do it all. And even people that I know
Hmm.
that are, supposed to be God fearing people, they're like, they're so worried about they have to do it all. Or like, patience, they don't have a whole lot of that for their, employees or whatever, uh, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, all that, gentleness, self control. Like almost never do they have gentleness. And then there's some guys that they have no self control. As soon as things go bad, they're yelling at everybody.
Right.
You know, and so it's like, okay, you've built this big thing, and it's good. And maybe God told you to do it, but like, is it truly excellent um, if there is no fruit of the spirit in it and the way that you interact with it or whatever. And I'd be willing to say that even if God did say like, hey, you should do this thing and I will bless it and build it in the same way that he blessed Saul, like if you completely forsake the Lord or the fruits of the spirit or the Holy Spirit, whatever, then I'd be willing to bet that he'd take it away from you before you completely walk away from him, kind of a thing.
Oh man.
Like if it's better for you that you lose the thing that you built than rather than lose
You
your
lose your
soul, kind of a
life.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
So
It's a
that's
dream,
something I've
man.
been thinking about.
That's that's a really deep focus. I mean, that's super convicting for me too, because I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, my business is picking up and things are going really well, but also I feel so like
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
self-centered, man.
I
Like,
get it. Well, and
I've
I struggle with like, oh, should I try to be more successful?
uh,
But then I'm like, okay, what should I focus on? And then it's like, okay, Lord, what do you have for me? And I don't feel any peace towards doing any particular, like certain things that would be considered earthly success. I don't feel like the Lord's going like, yeah, you should do these things. And so then I go like, okay, like, but should I? Because that's what people do, and that's how to be a good head of the household. But then I remind
right.
myself, God's the actual head of the household, and I know people that like you guys or my mentor JT, who were God literally took care of them for like an entire year.
Oh,
Like JT,
100%.
JT he tried to get a job because his wife asked him to, but for an entire year, the Lord was like, "No, I'm going to provide for you. You won't have a job."
Wow.
And so, like, he would try to get a job to make, because his wife was super stressed about it. But every
Yeah.
single month and every single, like, I think they had like a water heater break or something like that or whatever it was. And it was going to be a certain amount. And God literally just gifted it to him. And I've seen it in my own life. And maybe some people have different, uh, things on their life that the Lord wants to, like, God wants to
Right.
prove out certain things in certain people's lives in a way. And
Right.
maybe my
Like a
life is one of
deficit they
those.
have, maybe.
Well, or like an anointing for something, like, or like, so maybe one person gets the gift of healing because like and like really lives into it because God wants to prove to the world that that's the thing. Whereas people
Yeah.
like maybe me, you, JT, others, it's like he wants to go, yeah, you won't be successful in the way that people
Mm,
expect, but I'm going to bless you in like these ways
so
that are going to
true.
prove that I'm going to take care of you and you're going to
Wow.
have a fulfilling life in a way that those people that are naturally successful envy because you're fulfilled on the inside, even though you're not physically successful in that way.
Wow.
Like I expect to be,
Yeah. Financially stable.
yeah, and in a place where like we want to do a homestead and stuff like that, I expect that we'll be
Mm,
blessed, but I'm probably not gonna be a multimillionaire. It's just probably not gonna happen.
yeah,
You know.
but even
Um,
if you are, like, your journey to that space is not focused on, this is all I care about. This is my main goal. I will reach this goal. It's a part of the journey
yeah.
of discovery, you know?
Yeah, man. Sorry, I keep
It's
sucking up the air.
oh no, dude, it's really powerful. I'm really excited. I wanted you to share some a bit of focus on the Fringe Faith podcast and why you did the podcast and where people can find you. Yeah, so if anyone has an interest in that space or the focus that you have on the podcast, that they can find you as well.
Yeah. Um, Another one of those like, man, the Lord makes foolish the wise wisdom of the world kind of a thing. Everybody always says that you should focus on like one thing when you start a podcast, but I'm
Uh,
like, okay, well, my one thing is faith, and I'm gonna hit everything within the life of a person that believes. And so, for a lot of people, they'll probably be like, "Whoa, you're talking about way too many topics," and that's fair. But I think it's all important. It's all
uh,
a holistic approach to faith. I think that the believer should be focused on your typical theologies and apologetics and all this stuff, and like really breaking down faith and what it means to believe radically. But at the same time, the life of the believer is also health and fitness and like the mitochondrial function stuff I was talking about with the sun earlier. I think that stuff is super important because if you live better, then you just live better in every aspect, including your faith stuff. You feel better, you'll do better. So that, and then like masculinity and all that stuff, it's a big topic in culture today. Even the conspiracy stuff is big in today's
right,
culture, and so
it's
I
huge.
talk a little bit about some of that stuff. Like, because there is truth to the fact that there are really bad people in the world governments right now that are intentionally doing things out of a spiritualistic intention.
Huh.
Um, but on the flip side, are there, reptilians, shape shifting in government? I don't think so. No, I think that
I
has
love it.
roots. Yeah, I have that has roots in what is it, Mesopotamian ideology, but I think a lot of that parallels like Genesis 6 stuff and the Book
Huh.
of Enoch stuff, and like how do you seek truth in our age of conspiracy? You've got
Uh-huh.
the political sphere. You've got everything. So I'm talking about all of it
Huh.
because I believe it matters.
Right,
I even interviewed your buddy
Nick.
about about like we really dove into the preterism thing because I had never heard it actually
Huh.
explained
Me
well
neither,
before.
at
Yeah,
all, dude.
yeah,
He's the first guy who actually, in my life, have actually obsessed
really,
over that topic.
yeah. But it's a topic that I hadn't even heard of, and
Yeah,
regardless of whether or not I believe it or not, I'm like, oh, you're onto something for
yeah,
sure about the whole like we shouldn't be living like the world's going to end and
right.
completely forsake it because of that. I like,
I
but then
agree.
I talked about Michael Heiser's Deuteronomy 32 worldview, which
Huh.
is I think super important to grasp what's happening in culture with New Age
Right.
and the whole witchy vibe stuff happening in culture right now. And
Uh,
then we talked about some political things because I think it's important. I think we have to
I mean, it's only
cast
what's
down our
happening
political
right now.
idols.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
like
like
the
Trump
political
and
idol.
the
Yeah,
worship of Trump, or
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Not, and also the worship of, the leftist idea. Like both sides are just
uh,
false saviors, in my opinion.
yeah, 100%. Because
And
the
then
only
I'm
person who is
doing
supposed to worship is God. You know.
exactly, exactly. And yeah, we won't get into it. That's, and then I've talked a little bit about law, and I've talked a lot about, just different stuff. Testimonies is a big thing too. Just talking about different
Yeah,
people's testimonies, what they've been through, what God has done. So I'm hitting a lot of topics, but I genuinely believe every one of them is important in
yeah,
today's context for the believer. I just do. And so, yeah, if you're interested in any of it, it is the Fringe Faith podcast. It's on, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. I think even Amazon's podcast platform. And then, yeah, I post on Instagram sometimes, although I kind of want to just throw Instagram completely away sometimes.
I get it. Yeah.
I'm
Social
sick of it.
media. Back to social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
frustration. I get it, man. Yeah. For those of you who've listened, I mean, clearly God has been focusing on a couple topics, some of them being, marriage. If you're in that space and you're young and you're trying to figure out what it looks like to step into marriage, or if you're in that space and you feel like, wow, this has not met my expectations, man, we're all in this journey together. You can ask questions.
Yeah.
I'm sure Thomas is pretty open to having a conversation.
Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
want to reach out to him, and same here, these topics are real and you're not alone. You're not alone in this process. So it's, yeah. Well, if you like this episode, and is anyone that might be interested in the topics we talked about, just feel free to share it to them. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and thanks so much, Thomas, for coming on and throwing your wisdom our way. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
It's I'm thankful for you in my life. You're a person that's been consistent, a guy that's been very consistent in communication, and it's not always about how much you talk. It's about the quality of the conversations you have, and we have many of those. So I'm very thankful.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, dude. Yeah. See you later. Have a great day, guys.